This is Can I Laugh on Your Shoulder? Hey, welcome to Can I Laugh on Your Shoulder? I'm Molly Stillman, and this is a podcast where I sit down each week with a different guest and have raw, funny, often brutally honest conversations about the things that matter most. Faith, business, life, and everything in between, where we each learn how to be good stewards of the things we've been entrusted with, even our stories, and how we can use those things to serve others and leave our families, our friendships, and our communities a little better than we found them. I want to create a space where people are unafraid to be themselves and unafraid to ask the questions the rest of us are thinking. My goal is to make you laugh, cry, and laugh till you cry. My guests, yes, that is plural. My guests this week are Jenny and Dave Mars. They have been restoring and renovating historic homes since 2004. They are the stars of HGTV's Fixer to Fabulous, where they showcase their work in their beautiful hometown and surrounding area of Bentonville, Arkansas. They have millions of viewers, and yet they stay true to their renovation philosophy. A home should reflect the personality of the ones who live there. Perfection is never the goal. Beautiful spaces are often imperfect and full of character, just like a family. Whether they are in their corner of Arkansas or traveling the world, Jenny and Dave have their priorities straight. Faith, family, and community drive everything they do. Jenny just released her debut book, House Plus Love Equals Home, Creating Warm, Intentional Spaces for a Beautiful Life. It came out in November, and this book is a welcoming guide for anyone interested in transforming their house into a home that is a warm, inviting, and full of love place. It has photos, personal essays, and tips on how to intentionally renovate the 12 different spaces at a home that they most commonly work on. And this book really shares their journey of establishing their own home and balancing their ever-growing family with a busy, sustainable business and TV show. This was such a fun conversation. My daughter, Lily, loves Fixer to Fabulous. She just loves fixer-upper TV shows. I also love TV shows where we watch home renovations. I mean, I talk about that a little bit on the show, but this really was such a fantastic conversation. I also love the mission behind what Jenny and Dave do. You are going to love it. I'm telling you, it's going to be so much fun. So without further ado, on to my chat with Jenny and Dave Mars. Jenny, Dave, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. Hello.
Hello. Well, I am pumped about this for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, I just always love when I get to interview a couple. Like, it's just really fun. I don't know why. I like being like a third wheel in an interview situation. It's always a fun time. So that's number one. Number two, I have to tell you that when my daughter was born. So my daughter is 10 now. And when my daughter was born, so I have method to this madness of this story.
Okay.
I had a C-section with her, and I was already telling you a lot of information. And in my recovery, I was basically like stuck on the couch, with the newborn for, 6+ weeks. Right. And that is where I got my my love of HGTV. And so I don't know why. I guess it was because there was no more Ricky Lake, that's what I would watch during the day, like Price is Right, Good Price is Right. Anyway, from when I was a kid. Right. And so adult version of being on the couch all day was watching HGTV and shows like Island Hunters. Anyway, and now 10 years later, my daughter also loves HGTV. She loves fixer-upper type shows, and she loves Fixer to Fabulous. So I'm going to tell her, and she's just going to think that I'm the coolest person in the world, that I'm interviewing you guys because, she's 10. And so she's kind of bordering on sometimes mom is cool and sometimes mom is super embarrassing. So when I tell her that I got to talk to you today, I'm going to be real cool mom. So I just have to say thank you.
I love that. Our kids don't think we're cool. So there you go.
No.
Good. I'm glad you get some cool people.
Genuinely always wonder, do Brad Pitt's kids, do they know that their dad is Brad Pitt? Are they just ugh, dad, you're the worst, or Tom Brady, do his kids think he's cool or do they think he's super embarrassing dad?
Yeah.
I think it's almost a prerequisite for a kid that you don't want to do what your parents do.
Yeah.
It's not cool. I don't know. And then once you grow up, you realize like, oh, that was all right.
Yeah,
I
like,
didn't mind it.
wow, my dad was Tom Brady. My mom was Giselle Bundchen. Like,
that would be hard because that'd be like, oh, you probably are like, man, my mom's, you secure.
I know.
Like,
I'm just saying.
She was my mom.
I know. I'm just saying. Anyway, I realize this is incredibly random, but these are the things that I think about sometimes. So in any event, well, let's dive in. Let's have you give us the Jenny and Dave 101. So who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Okay. So we're Jenny and Dave, and we live in Arkansas. We live in Northwest Arkansas, Bentonville, which is the Northwest corner. We moved here in 2004. Dave grew up in Colorado. I grew up in Florida. We ended up in Arkansas. So that's a long story in and of itself. But we moved here because Dave's dad and brother had been here. They had moved here. Dave's brother was the first one to come here for college, the University of Arkansas, with his girlfriend at the time, who's now his wife. So you had knew of our Northwest Arkansas because of family and decided to come here and start a building company with his dad and brother. I'm telling your part of the story, but anyway,
okay.
His dad and brother, or his dad was a builder in Colorado growing up. So they decided to start a company together, and he asked if I would want to move here. So I quit my job and moved here, and here we are.
Yeah. 20 years later.
Not quite, almost. January 4th, I think, 2004 is when we moved. So almost 20 years. And we said, we'll come for 2 years. You can start building, see how it goes. And then we'll move back to Florida. That's what we told my parents. That was the plan.
I still hear about it every day from her mom.
Yeah. My mom wasn't happy. Yeah. So anyway, now, building, and then the network, and there's a lot in there, but anyway, make it short. The network heard about our town because of, a friend that lived here. And so they came to our town and asked around for people who were building and renovating homes. And we have quite a few historic homes in the area, and we have a love for historic homes and restoring them. And so they came to us and asked us if we'd be interested in doing the show. And we said no a couple times. And then we finally decided to do it because we have a nonprofit. We have a lot of reasons we decided to do it, that we felt like that was what God wanted us to do. We didn't really know why. So anyway, we said yes to doing a pilot, which was in 2000. Well, we did a sizzle in 2016, a pilot 2017. And we thought that would be it. That'd be the end, move on. And then they picked up a season, and here we are.
Yeah. Season 5, getting ready to air in about a week now?
Yeah.
Week and a half. So,
Well, when this airs, it'll already have.
Yeah.
That's
So season 5 has already aired.
Yeah. So when you're listening to this, you can go watch season 5 right now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Dave, tell me your story about how you kind of were you the mastermind behind all this, or were you kind of being drug along? Like how did this, because I love this story of you're just like, oh, well, we'll go up here for a little bit. And then all of a sudden 20 years later, now you have a television show on HGTV and,
Hang on.
So when I graduated from college, again, I think like we just talked about, I did not want to do what my dad did, which build log homes, build homes in Colorado.
Right.
So I went to corporate America, and that's how I met Jenny. We were at the same company out of college, and I did that for about 2 years. Both of us did, where we moved around. They employed, my first employment was here in Arkansas. Then I moved to Chicago. Then I moved to Austin. Then they wanted me to move to Philly. Jenny at the same time was kind of moving all over the place. And I just, I was working for someone else, and I told Jenny, I said, I want to go back to Arkansas and start building again. It's what I enjoy. It's what I love. And she thankfully agreed to try it for a few years. And we just, really just started building mostly new construction and remodel until 2006, 2007 crash. And then we started buying old houses in our downtown and restoring old houses. I love old houses. I love the stories that they hold. I love the exterior detail on the trim. I love that there's no wasted space. And that's something both of us love. And so we started restoring those. And then when HGTV came along, it, again, like Jenny said, it wasn't, we had a pretty good business. Things were going well. We didn't know that we wanted to expose our kids and our life and our family to all of America. So
we didn't know. I knew we did. I did not want to do it. Dave was more the, yeah, but that's okay.
So we had a good friend now, but he actually worked for the production company, Adam, who said, "Hey, can I meet you guys for coffee?" And so we said, "Oh, there's no harm in coffee, right?" So we went and we sat down with him, and he said, I've followed your story, and I've looked at your story of your daughter and your adoption process and your nonprofit and your heart for taking, for the work that you do over in Africa." And he said, I'm just going to be upfront with you. Most HGTV shows don't make it. If they have 60 or 70 pilots a year, maybe 3 or 4 of those make it. But he said, if just for 15 minutes, if you guys can have a platform where you can talk about what you really care about, don't you think it would be worth it? And so we went home, we prayed about it, we talked about it. And really, before we started the show, that became our why, was the nonprofit work. And so, it's been hard. It's been a hard 5 years. It's been busy. It's been no control over our schedule. It's, we start filming beginning part of April. This year we'll probably end middle December. But, during those hard days, it could be Jenny, it could be me. We'll look over and say, hey, let's just remember our why today. Remember our why. And so trying to refocus ourselves on why we said yes and why we do this and why we're here. But yeah, it was probably my fault, just because I thought, well, I just never thought it would go anywhere. I thought, we'd do a pilot, it would air on TV, and that'd be something I could always say. And here we are.
Well, I want to get to the why. And you've alluded to it a little bit. And for people that don't know your story and your heart for adoption, and this is another one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you guys on, just because this is, while my family and I have not had the opportunity to adopt yet, we have not shut the door on that. We're kind of waiting for, sometimes, it's a long, complicated thing, and, you never know. Yes. But we have a huge heart for supporting foster families and adoptive families. And both my husband and I have taken many trips to Kenya. We have deep relationships with friends, and we call it spiritual family there. And so I know that that's, such a, this is such a part of your story. And so I would love for you guys to share a little bit about that why, and how your story of adoption and empowering orphans has really woven itself into the fabric of not only your marriage, but your lives, the work that you do, and so much more.
Oh yeah, that's complicated. I love that you said that you have, deep relationships with your spiritual family in Kenya. That's kind of how we feel about our family, our leaders in Zimbabwe of our nonprofit program. And that's really, they're doing all the hard work every day. Right. And the reason I said, this has been, I actually had a time hop thing that reminded me 10 years ago, 2 days ago in October, was when I did my first little fundraiser that kind of started. That's what started. We ended up starting a nonprofit and all this, but it was 10 years ago. Basically, the kids in Sylvie's orphanage were our daughter, who we were in the process of adopting. They just weren't being fed at all. And so I did a fundraiser to raise money for food, just like urgent, they need food. And Sylvie wasn't living there at the time. We had moved her out of the orphanage, but I asked a couple other adopted moms, and we did this fundraiser and raised enough money to feed, I think it was 2 different orphanages for a month. And then I was like, well, we should do it again. So we just kind of kept doing it. Then a friend in the community said, hey, I want to start this music concert series, but I don't want to make any money from it. Can I give it to and at the time we had started this nonprofit. He's like, can I give the money to you guys? I'm like, yeah, okay. And so it was just became this thing. And then we ended up feeding 200 kids every month. And we partnered with a nonprofit, and this was in the Congo where Sylvie was from. And we partnered with a nonprofit there. They ended up kind of absorbing the program, and it sort of just took on a life of its own with their nonprofit. And we had this money still coming in that our leader in the Congo told us, hey, I don't really feel comfortable with you guys sending any money right now because of the political instability in our country. I can't promise where the money's going to go. And we're working everything. And so it kind of felt like it was just this crazy, weird period of like, what? Like, we just did all this work. We have this momentum, and now God just literally slammed the door, and there's so much need still there. But our leader at the time, who is just a really good man, had so much integrity to say, I can't accept it because we said, like, we're asking people for money. We want to know exactly where every dollar, if somebody's giving $5 or somebody's giving $500, it doesn't matter. It's their hard-earned money. We have a responsibility to know where every single penny is going. And he basically told us, and he was on the ground, and he said, I can't tell you that I can make sure the money is going where it needs to just because of what's happening in our country.
Right.
We paused that program and we were like, what do we do? Oh my gosh. And we ended up partnering with an organization that's actually out of North Carolina, where you are. But they are friends of ours who had work already happening in Africa. And Dave had gone with them to visit the Congo because we were trying to expand our program in Congo with them. And on the trip, when he first went, they stopped in Zimbabwe on the way home. And he met Pastor John and his wife, Orpah, who had been quietly running their ministry of caring for the kids in their community for, since the 80s at that point. And he's just the kind of person, like, you just bond with certain people. And so Dave came home just raving about this Pastor John and Orpah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to meet them. They sound so amazing. And I was pregnant at the time, so I didn't go on the trip. But fast forward to 2016, I think, we went as a family, visited John and Orpah. We decided this is, you guys are like, they just became dear friends, are kind of like grandparent figures to our kids. The work that they're doing is just, they just really are caring for the community really, really well. They're just the only word I could think of would be like humble servants. That's just who they are. And so we've just partnered with them. And one of John's dreams has always been to care for the teenage boys specifically in the community, because they're going to lead their families and they're orphaned and abandoned boys. And if they're going out, it's just going to it's never going to break the cycle, because the girls had opportunities with trade schools and different things, but there weren't really very many opportunities for boys. Pretty much if they were orphaned or abandoned and living on the streets, they were looked at, as trouble. They're just trouble. Nobody wanted to help them because they're sort of like too far gone.
Right.
And so John really had a heart for those boys, and so do we. And so he had a dream to start this training program in farming for them. And we have a farm. We have a farm here, and we're just about to launch our farm. We had planted the blueberries 2 years before, 2 or 3 years, and we were about to have our first harvest. And we knew we wanted it to go to a nonprofit. We just didn't know where and how exactly. So that was in January, and in June we had our first harvest, and we started the program there. So now it's it's basically a trade program for orphaned, abandoned teens, girls and boys. We have dorms there now, and they go through this program and they learn life skills. They learn how to farm, they learn how to weld, how to sew, all the things, the science, all of that. But they feed the kids at the orphanages, and then they sell product in the community. They basically, it's, teaching a man to fish versus giving him a fish, that concept.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we are with that. And I think all of that started because of our adoption process. And I know God broke our hearts for the extreme poverty around the globe. Obviously, there's so much brokenness here at home as well. But I feel like God puts places on your hearts, and he put Africa on our heart. He just did. And specifically Congo and Zimbabwe. So I think because of our adoption process, it took us 2 years to get Sylvie home, and involved multiple trips. It involved creating relationships, like you said. And it's all about relationships. It's about these people that we care about, and we want to help make their community better. It's not about coming in and changing everything and making it our way. It's about helping our friends, or lending a hand, because we do have resources here that they don't have, but they know what their community needs. We don't know what their community needs, so we're not going to go in and tell them what to do. But if we can help them with the resources, then they can go do it, because that's, they're fully capable of making change. So, yeah. Sorry. I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about how adoption really came into the fabric of your lives. Like, I know that, and it's not that there's really people out there that are like, what is terrible is taking care of orphans. Like no one's saying that. However, like the reality is adoption, fostering, really, I mean, that is something you have to be called to. It is not an easy process. It's not, there's trauma on every level. I mean, adoption is beautiful, but at the root of it is trauma and brokenness and separation of a child from their biological family and their culture or whatever. I mean, there's so much pain and brokenness involved in adoption, in addition to restoration and redemption and beauty and so many things. So, it is something you have to be called to. And so was this something early on in your marriage you knew that you were both called to, or where did it come into the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, we always, adoption was always important to both of us. I think Jenny was always good about waiting, and we had our twin boys. We had actually started the adoption process before we had the twin biological boys, and so we paused our adoption process, and then our boys were how old when we started again?
18 months.
18 months, and we both kind of just started talking about adoption again, and it's just like you said, it's something that I think we've always had a heart for and has always been important to us. When we went to Africa, I think it changed, well, at least for me, it changed from even just adoption to more family preservation, keeping families together. And so I think that's kind of where we've gone from, just wanting to adopt to now starting these farming and training programs. Is as much as, it's Sylvie's our little girl, and having her here is the most amazing thing ever. I would love a world where a mom didn't ever have to make the choice to give Sylvie up. And so if we can keep kiddos with their family, that's kind of like, that's the path that we've taken from our trips over there.
Yeah, but I think what you said is so good, because I have so many adopted mom friends, foster family friends. We support foster organizations in our community because they're organizations that care for foster families, because they really need so much support.
They do.
I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around adoption and foster care, and yeah, you have the pretty, the fun homecoming photos and the smiling photos and all of that, but they're just like you said, it's all rooted in brokenness, and you have to be called to it, because if you're not, then you are. I don't even know I don't understand how you could step into adoption or foster care without having a true calling from God, that's your path. And for us, we had so many really tangible, very distinct confirmations from God that when we were on our path to adopt Sylvie, that she is our daughter, and we have to fight for her, and we're going to bring her home. And if we didn't have all of those, I think it would have just been impossible for us to, because
I think we would have given up.
Well, I don't know that, but I think it would have been really hard. I mean, the process itself was really hard. It took us 2 years to get her home, but that's not even the hardest part. The hardest part has been the past 9 years having her home and having to help her to heal. I mean, the first 2 years of life, your brain is formed. Every cell, like everything is formed in those years. And so it's not like you come home and everything's fine. Like, we're now home. Yay, you have a family. You should be grateful, because I think, and for me, I get really, mama bear when people are like, she's so lucky she has you as a family. I'm like, she's not lucky. I promise you. She's had to endure more in her life than most anyone that I personally know. And she's strong, and she's, yes, resilient. But I think that the word resilience only goes so far. And I think sometimes it's just like, nobody wants to step into the really hard because it's uncomfortable. So it's better to say, kids are resilient. Yay, you're a happy family, tie a bow and move on. So I think it's important to really acknowledge that trauma is really hard. And it's hard on the whole family. Yeah. And there's so much beauty in adoption and redemption and all of that, but it is all very much rooted in trauma and loss and brokenness, which is just the reality.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, but I love how you always bring it back to just centering the the lives of these children and just, because, that is not always the case. And so that's such an important component. So for people, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh no, I was going to also say for our other kids, our biological kids too. Sylvie's siblings, like they've seen, like they've experienced trauma because of the adoption process and because of everything they've experienced it and lived it out. But I think that their hearts have also been shaped and formed in a way that wouldn't have happened had they not walked through this with their sister. When we all traveled together to Africa, I think it hit them in a new way. And they were little at the time. The boys were only 6 at the time. Charlotte was 2. So she's kind of 2. I would say mostly it's the boys who were really impacted seeing like, oh, okay. Like it just was a different, I don't know, like they got to see and understand like, oh, I get it. Like this is, I don't know, the brokenness was real for them. And they're like, okay. And they saw their sister kind of in a new light and all the hurt and stuff that she brought into their lives. They kind of had a new perspective and appreciation for her. And, but all that to say, like, I remember distinctly one time we were at this concert and, it was Chris Tomlin, and he was talking about his nonprofit work. And he asked adoptive parents to stand up and, they applauded, adoptive parents. And my boys were with me. It was me and the boys. We did like this date night thing with the boys. And I stood up, like, I didn't want to stand up, and my boys were like, Mom, you got to stand up. You got to stand up. And they were cheering and they were so proud. And like, for me in that moment, it was like God saying, Jenny, they're going to be okay. Like, they see it. They know that you've all walked through hard, but they've seen me in it. They've seen the restoration. They've seen the good, and they have these generous hearts, for the world and for the hurting and the oppressed and the broken. And I think that they seek out those people in ways that they wouldn't have. And they know how to love in ways they would never learned had we not walked through hard brokenness, and healing in our own home.
Yeah. And we still are. I mean, it's something that it doesn't ever stop. Like there's always hard along with the good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to take a quick break from my chat with Jenny and Dave to let you know that right now you can go pre-order my book, which comes out March 26th, 2024. My book, If I Don't Laugh, I'll Cry: How Death, Debt, and Comedy Led to a Life of Faith, Farming, and Forgetting What I Came into this room for, is now available for pre-order. Go get your copy now. It is a huge help to authors to pre-order their book, but also that just means that on the day it comes out, it will be on your doorstep waiting for you to crack it open. I cannot wait for you to read this book and for you to know that your broken mess up story it's never too late. It's never too late to turn your life around, that your broken and mess up story has a purpose. I know that you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to laugh till you cry. It's such a fun book. I can't wait for you to read it. And so go pre-order it now. You can go to stillbeingmolly.com to find out more. And you can also just get it wherever books are sold. Now back to my chat with Jenny and Dave Mars. So for people that might not understand how, so they're like, so HGTV comes along and says, we want to do a show. How have you kept the mission and the why as at the forefront of it? Because, on paper, a fixer-upper, like home restoration show doesn't necessarily correlate directly with compassion for orphans. You know what I mean? On paper, it might not make sense to someone, but how do you use this tool of a show and a large platform to be able to really actually talk about the thing that you care about the most?
On the show itself, it's been hard because obviously, I guess not obvious, maybe that's not the right word, but the network isn't necessarily like advocating for us to be talking about these things on their show, right? On our show, right? They know their viewers. They know the viewers just want to watch a home renovation show. Like they don't want to hear about something, even though I disagree, I think people really do care, but they don't like to include it on the show. So it is a bit of a challenge, and it's kind of a battle every year. We try to sneak in little things here and there. And the first time they aired our Berry Fest, which is our big fundraiser in our berry farm, that funds our farm program in Zimbabwe. We were so excited. It was like such a huge win. And it's kind of a constant like battle in that front. But in the everyday, like the show itself is just our job, like renovation work, building, all of that is our job. We do that anyway. And so it really doesn't, it's not like we don't live in Hollywood and go to a set. We just go to work. And so the day to day it is what it is. It's just in our everyday life. And then the way, like every summer, our kids are working in the berry fields, and on, social media, we're talking about the things we care about whenever it makes sense. I think we just do it in a way that's not normal and natural.
And the show, it's obvious. It's given us a platform to talk about it.
Right.
We probably wouldn't be on your podcast if we didn't have a show.
Yeah.
So that enables us to, to put forward more so what we want to talk about. And the network was upfront with us. They said, hey, year one, people could care less about your family. They care about the renovations that you do. If you get on to years 2, 3, 4, 5 different seasons, that shift starts to happen where viewers are more invested in your family and less so in the renovations that you do. So then every year you get to talk a little bit more about this stuff that is more personal, where, I think now at this point, they like to see more of the personal stuff. They like to see more of the kids. They like to see more of, the everyday life stuff, and there's not so much of a focus on the renovations as there was in season 1.
Yeah. But also our kids are older and they don't really want to be on.
Yeah.
So it's hard to talk about it. Like when we started, the kids were little and we were like, oh, this is great. Cause it's very easy to talk about adoption because obviously we're a transracial adoptive family. It's very obvious just looking at us, where now the big kids don't want to be on TV, and Sylvie especially doesn't want to be on TV. And we would never force the kids to be, when we're filming, to be on the show. So it's become, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. We just kind of weave it in normally, naturally.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things you talked about at the beginning was your heart for older homes and historic homes and the restoration process of that, which I love so much because I grew up in an old home. I grew up in a early 1900s. I think it was actually built in 1900, farmhouse in a small town in Virginia called Herndon, which was like a little historic town outside of DC. Now, of course, it's like, a bustling metropolis because AOL moved in there in the 90s. And then after that, it was like all the tech companies. And now it's, it's 20 minutes outside of DC. But, it has a really, a lot of really cool historic homes. Like some movies have been filmed there. And the house I grew up in was, again, this old historic home. And it was cool because, when I was growing up, my mom bought it in, I want to say it was like 1980. And she bought it. She had moved, she was a Vietnam veteran, and she was kind of going through her, therapy and PTSD and post-war stuff. And she'd moved back from, to Herndon from California. And she wanted to buy this house, and she goes and she looks at it, and it had no indoor plumbing. It had no HVAC system. It had a single electrical outlet that was running extension cords like all throughout the house. And it had a bay window that when she walked in, she saw the bay window and she pictured a Christmas tree there. And she said, this is the house I want to buy. And, but it had like the horsehair insulation and all. And so of course this is like way before, the HGTV renovation shows. Yes. And, she eventually met my dad who knew how to do drywall. And so obviously she fell in love with him because he knew how to do drywall. And, so, my entire childhood was like a life of a fixer upper because it had so much character and quirk but I loved it. And I loved that house. My parents were married in the living room of that house. I was christened in the living room. But then we started uncovering all these really cool stories about it. Like at one time it was a school, then at one time it was a parsonage. And, the guy Patch Adams, like the Robin Williams movie. Yeah. So it turns out we learned that when Patch Adams, like the real Patch Adams, not Robin Williams, but when the real Patch Adams was building his hospital in West Virginia. He actually lived in our house with his, like, I guess he called them his zanies, like while he was like building that. So I just like, I'm like, Patch Adams lived in my house.
Cool.
But anyway, like, so I think growing up in that house and in that world where it's just everything about it told a story. I just love old homes because of that.
Yes.
And our town always did like a historic homes tour, and like we were the literal poster child for it and all of that. So I share all of that to say, you know, obviously that is a huge part of my heart. And so I would love for you to share, you know, kind of how that became a part of why you became so passionate about it. And, you know, even just some of the things that you've kind of come across as you go in, because I think there's such a deeper meaning to it too, where you were talking about like the restoration, the stories that these homes tell. And I love it. There's no wasted space. You know, so I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
I don't know. I think we both just love old. There, like you said, there's like a quirkiness there. There's so much character built in already. Our home is 1903. Yeah. And it's smaller and we have to use every little inch, but we love it. Same. I think it's just, like you said, the stories. Like I always think of one of the first houses we remodeled together. We found, when we were opening up a wall, we found letters, postcards home from World War II.
Yeah.
Was it World War II?
Oh, that's so cool.
To his bride, or I don't know, girlfriend, wife, I don't know. But we found these letters in the wall, and just the idea of like, these homes have told stories or held stories for so many years. Like the stories you just told about your house. Like, imagine how many stories for the 100 years before you were there were in that home. And so I think for us, it's all about preserving history. Like we both love history and love just the life that happens in a home. And I think when it's just like a cookie cutter home that's built really quickly, there's no character, there's no life, there's no soul to it. And historic homes just already have all that built in. That's what I love about them.
Yeah.
Like, you're probably more on the craftsman side.
No, I mean, I love the way that they were built. I love that the apprentices and the craftsmen that built these homes, you can tell just in the quality of them, how, you know, that it was a different time. They were building a house for generations, not just for the next few years until it could be sold again. And so our house, we actually got contracted to tear our house down by a church in our little town. They were going to expand their parking lot. And it was such a cool old home. And so we convinced them to give us the home. They wouldn't have to spend the money on the tear down. And so we actually moved our home out to our farm that we live on now. And we've been here now for 10 years. For 10 years. Wow. We've owned the house for about 13. And when we started on renovations, horsehair plaster everywhere.
Oh yeah.
It's all solid oak, the way it was built. And we've, you know, as our family has grown and changed, we've just, you know, we've adapted the house to fit our family's needs, but all with, you know, kind of within that same footprint of what we moved out here. And we have the bay window that you were talking about. We have that same bay window that our Christmas tree goes in every single year. We've got
branding, like you said, there's always work. Like right now we're in a construction zone because we're remodeling again because we're moving everyone around. But that's also kind of, I don't know.
Well, your family's story changes as you know, when we moved out here 10 years ago, our twins were just about to turn 4. Now they're bigger than Jenny is. I mean, they're 14 and so and 13, and they share a room. And so that it just doesn't work anymore. And so we're kind of, you know, there's always a shift and a juggle to make it fit our family's current needs. But, you know, we've kind of both, we're of the mindset we don't want to move again. We love this, like, you know, we brought Sylvie home in this house. We had Charlotte and Luke in this house. Our boys have, you know, they're out on the farm, and like all the stories that we have, it's part of our family's overall story. This house is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're still, it's still working well for us. So I don't want to leave. I don't want to go anywhere else.
Okay, quick logistical question, because you kind of just said it, and then I'm like, wait a second, did you say what I think you said? Like, so you physically moved the house?
Oh,
We
yes.
did.
Okay, I have a logistical question as to like, how do you move a house?
So you shut a highway down for about 3 hours on a Sunday morning. But
It takes about a month of prep.
It takes about a month. So we took the roof off. We lifted the roof off in 3 sections, and then we lifted the main floor up in just 1 section. And they use hydraulic jacks, and they raised the whole house off its foundation, and then set I-beams under it, and then.
But we had already poured a foundation here.
Yeah.
So when we moved it across town, it got set back on the foundation.
Yeah. So we took it through our old historic downtown, out a highway about 8 miles out to some land that we have out here. And we couldn't get up the dirt road that we live on. So we went through a neighbor's field until the semi truck and the house sunk down in the mud and dirt. And then we got a few bulldozers and pulled it the rest of the way onto the foundation. And I'll tell you something, all single, like original glass, and that house mover, they did not break or crack one piece of glass. I mean, and we moved it 10 miles. So it can be done. And we've moved several houses since then, just to, again, preserve old houses. But yeah, it's a lot of people,
it's just part of it. People are moving downtown again to our little downtown, and they're tearing houses down and building something new. So whenever we can, we haven't done a lot, I'd say three times. If we can, we move the house out and to another lot and restore it. And, when we can, because we love old houses. And I feel like when they get torn down, it just changes the whole character of the town. You were talking about the town you grew up in and how different it is now. Like that, we're seeing that happen over I would say the past 10 years in our town. It's changed a lot, and it makes me sad. So we fight against it as much as we can.
I know.
House at a time.
Okay, so then my second question, I'm fascinated by the logistics of moving a house. I just I don't know why that is like, my brain is sitting here going like, how do you move a house?
Yeah,
I mean,
I know
it's not
crazy.
that's not like a trailer. You know what I mean? Like,
looking back, we probably would have should have just rebuilt the second story instead of moving it and placing it back on, because it was more complicated. But I also love it that it has all the quirks and stuff. So
I love it. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. And then this question, because you were kind of saying, you were talking about how you have these houses in these neighborhoods that just get, they buy developers buy up these land, plots of land, and then they just come in and they build these neighborhoods with a cul-de-sac and cookie cutter houses. And, I have lived in those neighborhoods. And now we live, on a farm. While it's an 80s farmhouse, it's not, from the 1980s. But yeah, it's been so fascinating to me, because especially in the last few years, like post-COVID, I don't know how it is in Arkansas. I know how it is in North Carolina. And home construction is just insane. So many people are buying land and building. Because actually though, I think it was in like US News and World Report, like USA Today, like Raleigh, Durham is like one of the fastest growing areas in the country. And we just have people moving here. Like what we bought our current farm, we've only lived here 3 years. Like we could sell it for easily almost $500,000 more than what we paid for it. Like what we paid for our current house on 12.5 acres, like people are buying cookie cutter houses on a 1/4 acre lot in a neighborhood. Right. And both my husband and I are like, how did this happen? Like we are just like, what? And so because of that, people are like, okay, well, we're going to just buy land and build, or, we're going to build a home or whatever. And I've thought about this a lot. Like, it's for some people, they don't think about this, but I do. You look forward 50, 60, 70, 100 years, when the homes that are being built now are the old homes. They're 100-year-old homes. Yeah. Like they're not going to be like the 100-year-old homes of today, of my childhood.
Right.
And what is the shift? Like, what's the cultural shift in homes. Cause it's not like, you go to downtown Bentonville or I go to downtown Herndon. It's not like people were living on large plots of land, but it was every house was unique and special and different. And it wasn't this cookie cutter thing. And so I'm just curious about the cultural shift that has caused the homes that are being built today to be less individualistic and unique and special. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think you actually answered the question when you were asking it as far as just what property values are doing. It's the same in our little downtown. They take a little 1,000 square foot house and they tear it down because they can put on that same lot a 3,000 square foot house that is worth triple what it was. So I think you're having a shift of people looking more so into the investment of the home and what they can resell the home for versus their family living in it for generations and making it fit. So
yeah, like we are helping a friend in Italy actually restore her farmhouse that they bought, and it's been really fun. It's like dream job, but it's so different there. I think in a lot of places in Europe, but especially Italy, that a lot of families have owned these homes for generations. I mean, the same family, like
300-400 years.
Yeah, nobody's buying a house unless they're a foreigner, but they're not typically buying a house, restoring it and selling it. They're literally living in the house that their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents lived in. And if they are buying a new old house to restore it, it's to restore it to live in it. It's not this like investment mentality like we have. I think we have that like flipper mentality too here. Unfortunately, probably HGTV probably contributed to that. Not our show, but others. But I think
all of them.
But I think that's I think it's just a different mentality. And it is. I mean, and a home is an investment, and that's okay. Like that also is okay. Like when we first started building, we would live in a house while we restored it and then sell it and move to the next one and do the same thing. Like that's just
in our tax laws, construction lobbyists, that it's all about building a house to resell it. I mean, what else in America can you keep $500,000 tax-free for living somewhere 2 years?
Right.
There's no. And so I think as long as tax laws are that way, I think another thing, from COVID, a lot of companies and a lot of people realized they could live places they want to actually be, and they could do it and still do their job. So you're seeing places like North Carolina, you're seeing places like Bentonville, Arkansas, you're seeing places that have a lot more temperate climate than maybe a Pittsburgh or maybe a, Buffalo, or that people are like, wait, I can still work for the same company and I can live somewhere where I get 4 full seasons and it's half the price of where I'm moving from. That's a no-brainer. So we've seen prices go through the roof here in Bentonville, but they're selling $1 million condo in San Francisco and then buying $1 million 3,000 square foot house in Bentonville. So, I mean, who's the sucker in that situation? Like they're getting a lot more value coming here I think we're just used to lower prices because we were never the areas with the AOLs, with the, with the Googles, with, that have what some of those cities have. So you're seeing that shift now. And, North Carolina is one of those states that has low taxes or, a lot lower taxes than California. And so so many people that we build houses for and do renovations that have moved here from California. Like, so many, they're leaving a better climate, but they're getting half the tax rate. They're getting the schools they want. They're getting, X, Y, and Z, and they can still do their job that's in California.
Right. Yeah. No, man, I could unpack so much of that because I feel like there is so much of that is like just change in culture and change in how we do things. And it's actually, before we were recording, I was telling you about how I, chaperoned a field trip to Grandfather Mountain for my daughter's 4th grade class. And we were driving home from the field trip, and I ended up riding with my daughter's best friend's mom. And so, we'd been in the car together all day, to the mountains and around the mountains and back. And we were driving through Morganton, North Carolina. And, it's just kind of at the base of the mountains and really as you're starting to go up the mountain. And we were driving and it was just, it's another example of, I mean, there's a million Morgantons, as far as like, there are just a ton of abandoned warehouses and abandoned old homes and abandoned like downtown areas that you just look at. And I look at those places and I go, man, like what did this place look like in its heyday?
Yes,
Like when it was when Morganton was a bustling metropolis, and
I know.
and so
we do a lot of road trips, and we always say that we're like, man, you drive through towns, and you're like, gosh, it's so sad. Like, what was this before?
Yeah. And, and then we started talking about just like how, North Carolina was this hub for textile manufacturing and furniture manufacturing. And so you had, North Carolina being one of the top states in the country at one time, for really the craftsmanship. And so, of course, you have all these people that are living in these towns working. They're all working at the cotton mill. They're all working at the furniture factory. They're all working, in these factories. And then, of course, like because they're craftsmen, like that's what they're building for their own homes and things. And then, but then those jobs and those factories end up getting shut down, and then those people move, and nobody's like, where I'm going to move? Morganton. Like it's just not. Yeah. And so I'm fascinated as to like what those towns and those homes and those areas will look like even in, 10, 15, 20 years, when the people who lived there their whole lives, like when they eventually die off, what's going to happen to these areas. Anyway, these are really deep, like existential thoughts that I hadn't really thought that we were going to get to. And I know we're running out of time. But I really just appreciate how you guys, again, you get to talk about these things. And while it might be like, oh, it's, under the kind of the banner of a fun renovation show, like there's something so much deeper to it. And you really get to the heart of what makes a house a home. And I know that's such just the heartbeat of what you do is, house plus love equals home. And so talk about the book that is coming out. Actually, by the time this airs, your book will be out. So congratulations, by the way, I always like to applaud my guests who are releasing a book. I released my first book in the spring, I'm releasing my first book in the spring. And so I know what a labor of love it is. So congratulations. But tell us about the book and, where people can get it and all of the book things.
Yeah, no, it's been a definite labor of love, something that I've been working on for a really long time and then really concentrated on probably last 18 months. And it was just, it was a lot of work. But basically the book is about just intentional living, really carving out spaces in your home with intentionality. It's a lot about what we just talked about too, about not being so caught up in the resale value of your home and making your home work for your family. I think that's a really hard thing for people to wrap their minds around, even if they're not like doing it for investment purposes. They just have our culture has this mentality of you have to make sure you're doing these things because of resale value. But if you're not planning on selling your home, and even if you are, make it work for you. Love your home. You're here. You're living in it. It's the place where you spend most of your time. And it's really just about giving you permission to be creative with your home and your spaces, rethinking spaces to work for your family. And mostly just like, hopefully, again, just an encouragement for people to think about their home differently. I think that, again, it's this safe place that you want your kids to come back to again and again after they grow up and remember fondly. And even if you don't live there anymore, like we all remember our childhood homes, especially if we lived in the same place for a long time.
That song by Miranda Lambert, The House That Built Me, literally makes me cry every time I hear it. Cause I'm like, that's my house. That's what it is, But I think that's why that house, that song was so successful. Cause there's so many people saw themselves, heard themselves in that song.
Yes. And not everyone has that experience, but that's okay because you can give yourself that experience and you don't have to be in a home. You can be in an apartment, you can be in a rental. It doesn't matter. It's wherever you are, making that place feel like who you are and putting your stamp on it while you live there. I mean, you can always paint the walls back and sell it. It doesn't matter. You can make changes and take risks. And I don't know, it's about giving yourself permission to love the space where you live. And each chapter is focused on a different space in your home. And then I tell a lot of stories about our family and our life throughout the book. Yeah. So it's a little bit, it's not like just how to design a living room, it's more just like, hey, here's some stories. Like in the living room chapter, I talk about our Christmas mornings and what they look like and what they feel like and what I love about them. And so, it's just, and then I share stories of, homes that we've done. And again, it's not like this is what you have to do. This is just what we do in our home. And these are what some of our clients, what we did for them.
Right.
And take that and pull from that what inspiration you can, but really use it as a place where hopefully you read the essays, because I love them because they worked really hard on them.
Yeah.
But read them, be inspired, and like think through like, okay, what do I want my kids to think about with our living room? What's a story from our own living room that we, I can look back on? And I don't know. I think it's more about just the intentionality behind the space, not how to make it perfect, because it's not ever going to be perfect. And if it is, you live in a perfect home and you do have kids and pets, or if it's just you by yourself, then your home is not really lived in, because there's no such thing as a perfect home that's really lived in. If your kids are like our kitchen table right now, there's paint supplies, there's a half painted pumpkin, there's just random stuff. And that's part of life. Like that's real life happening. And I think giving yourself permission to say there's beauty in this mess because it's life happening. And that's good. It doesn't matter if it's not a perfect photo for Instagram. Who cares? Giving yourself permission to let go of those expectations that other people have of you and your home, and, embracing life and life happening under your roof.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because I admit that I'm somebody who I don't need an Instagram worthy home, but I will admit that like clutter and things everywhere and children's socks and random like worksheets from school and art crap like all over my house stresses me out. I'm not even going to lie. Like it's just, there are times where I'm like, I burn it all down. Like I just am done. But then totally normal. But then I have to be like, okay, you know what? Like my kids are young and we're going to hang the silly artwork on the wall, and we're going to like, someday my kids are going to not have socks on my floor because they're not going to live here anymore. I don't know why they choose to put the socks on the floor or on my kitchen counter. I don't know why. I just want to go. Do your children do this? I just need to ask. Like, do your kids come in the house and just take off their socks and just like throw them? Like,
and shoes, socks, shoes, everything. I talk about our mud room, and we have hooks for backpacks and all the things. No, they're
all on the ground.
They're on the ground. Why? Why don't you put them on the hook? The hook is there.
The hook is right there.
I don't know.
Like this morning.
I do feel like we have had a really sweet gift in that Luke, our youngest, we had four and under in a season, and it was chaos. But now those four are the big kids, and we have Luke, and it just gives this perspective of like, oh my gosh, like the little crazy toys and Lego sculptures, they do go away, and it goes really fast. Like, the 13-year-olds aren't doing that anymore. They don't have toys. They don't have Legos, where Luke does now. And I appreciate his Lego creations and his little toys around and the stuff on my kitchen table that he plays with so much more now, because I know it's going to be gone so soon. And like, the preteens and teens, they have the cups in the room and the trash and all that. Like that's annoying.
The cups.
Every season there's something, but then again, like you said, I do know it goes in an absolute blink. And so if I can appreciate today where we are today, and I can have that perspective, it doesn't happen all the time, because believe me, I go crazy. I'm like, the piles and the stuff. I drive me nuts. But it's also like, that's what I hope this book is a reminder to like appreciate those things too, because there's a balance, and everybody has them, and it's okay to have them, but they're not going to be there forever.
Exactly. Yeah. What is it with the drinking vessels? I cleaned out my daughter's room last week, and there was 9 drinking vessels. I was like, what are you doing? How thirsty are you?
Ridiculous.
I'm carrying them down the stairs.
Oh my goodness. And then I remember my son, who's 7, he was like, I was like, did you clean your room, buddy? He's like, yeah, I did. And then I went upstairs and I found, I went upstairs and found an entire like plate full of like old snacks and just, what is happening in here? Anyway. Oh man. Okay. Well, this has been fantastic. Tell people where they can best connect with you guys, where they can get the book, all those things if people want to follow more of what you do and support the work that you guys are doing, especially on the nonprofit side.
Thanks. So, well, Fixer to Fabulous is airing now. This is on Tuesday nights at 8/7 Central.
Yeah.
My book is available. It's called House Plus Love Equals Home, everywhere that books are sold, I suppose. Yeah. And then Instagram, you're Dave.Mars and I'm Jenny Mars. And those are the best. I mean, we don't really do any other social media. Can't keep up with it all. There's too many options. So that's where we're usually at.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Oh, and nonprofit stuff. Yeah, that's all on there. Yeah.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Oh my gosh, this was such a pleasure. And like I said, just huge fans of your work. And thank you for the way that you just put your faith and your why out there for so many people to see. It's a really awesome thing to witness.
Thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate your time.
I hope you loved this conversation with Jenny and Dave. Please let me know what you liked on social media. You can find me at Still Being Molly or at Can I Laugh Pod, wherever you get your social medias. And would you head on over to whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on? Would you click that subscribe or follow button so that we make sure that you never miss a new episode of the show? And if you have a moment, would you take some time to leave a review? Leaving a review really does help me to know what you're liking and how the show is personally impacting you. Thank you, as always, for listening each week. Thank you to the team at Third Wheel Media for producing the show. And for you, I hope something this week makes you laugh till you cry. See you next week. Bye.